Hello and welcome to this episode of Your Money with me, Mary Holm. Thanks for taking just a few minutes to listen in while Jessie Mulligan and I talk through some useful ideas about how to make your money work better for you. Just remember though, this is guidance. Final decisions are up to you. Over to Jessie.
Let's go to Mary Holm. Hi.
Hi, Jessie.
You haven't worked it out, have you, Mary?
No.
Okay.
I've been thinking about it, but...
Got some Leonard Cohen for you if you're good before 3 p.m. Sounded a bit patronising, didn't it?
You're tempting me. Yeah.
I know you're a fan. Okay.
I
am. We got an interesting email from someone which we might discuss just ahead of our main conversation this week. So we were talking about KiwiSaver recently, and Andrew got in touch. I think it was Andrew. No, Peter got in touch and quotes you, Mary, as saying that realistically the government is never going to take your personal KiwiSaver funds. I remember you saying that. You said
Yes.
KiwiSaver is your own money, it's your own account, and there's no way that you or I or the Prime Minister can ever guarantee what future governments are going to do, but realistically it's not going to happen. And Peter assiduously researched 5 different examples through history of times when governments lent on people's savings as a way of getting out of problems, including Cyprus 2013, France and Britain post-World War II. Well, he goes on.
Yes, and the other ones are even older in history. And, I suppose the lesson to me is never say never, although I don't know that I might have said never. Peter has one fairly recent example of Cyprus in 2013, and there was some money taken out of people's bank accounts to save the country from bankruptcy. New Zealand's a long, long way from that. This country is not about to go bankrupt. And his other examples are all 70 years old or more. Nonetheless, he does make a good point. And they are all, he says, democratically elected governments. And so perhaps in the future I should not say never. But these were all actually money taken out of people's bank accounts. And I was talking about KiwiSaver, and I'm not saying KiwiSaver would be any safer than bank accounts. But
if you own part of a company with your KiwiSaver, they're not exactly going to make you cash up, are they?
No, I think it'd be more difficult for for a government to actually take money out of people's KiwiSaver than out of their bank accounts, in fact. And it's so unlikely that either's going to happen, that...
In fact, he's making a better argument for KiwiSaver than he might have intended, because if his alternative to KiwiSaver is just to put the money into a bank or do something like that with it, then he's probably more vulnerable. Yeah,
and putting it under a mattress is even more vulnerable because of burglaries and fires, the fact is you've got to do something with your money, and there's not a lot of point in sitting around worrying about things that are awfully unlikely to happen. Yeah, so thanks to Peter, because he makes a good point, and I promise never to say never again about that. But it's very unlikely, okay. I'd say. Yeah.
Your main topic for the interview this week is to help us out with curbing our spending, Mary.
Yes, yeah. I think, there's been a lot of publicity in the last week or two about the government looking at more ways to stop lenders from lending irresponsibly, and under the law now they're not allowed to lend irresponsibly. But it occurs to me when I'm listening to all of that ultimately we have to watch our spending rather than hoping that financial institutions are going to do it for us, and so I thought it might be a good idea to look at some of the ways that we might be able to curb our own spending if we're spending unnecessarily. There's obviously a heck of a lot of our spending is necessary for accommodation or food and that sort of thing. But a couple of comments on unnecessary spending. A lot of times people do it because it makes them feel happy, and on the day, there's no doubt about it that, you could buy some new clothes or wonderful meal or something like that and it makes you feel happier. But I suggest people who do that a lot might want to make a note in their diary or on the calendar, on the fridge or whatever, to think about their spending a month later, and perhaps also a year later. Think about that purchase and whether it really did make you much happier in the long run or not. And I think that can make people realise that after a while they just got a whole lot more clothes, and each individual piece in the wardrobe isn't worth a whole lot, or other items. And another reason that people often spend unnecessarily is for the sake of appearances, to keep up with the Joneses. I mean, sometimes literally to look good with clothes or cars or something like that, but sometimes just because you know all your friends are doing wonderful travel, or all your friends are getting the house done up, the new kitchen, things like new kitchens. Look, it's nice to have a new kitchen, but how often do we really need one, or is it just because we're trying to impress other people? So that's just something to be thinking about, sort of challenge yourself when you're spending perhaps unnecessarily.
I don't expect you to solve this problem in this session, Mary, but I think a lot of couples probably have a problem where one couple spends more than the other one, and so no matter how much you're trying to watch your spending, there's this other sort of outgoing problem in the relationship.
And I hope you don't expect me to solve that problem ever, Jessie, let alone in this session, because I mean, we have talked about that before, that it's a huge problem in a whole lot of relationships, that people have different attitudes to money, and it's not easy. And I suppose what I can say is the one who's more careful with the money, don't just attack the other one. Try and get them on board with looking at their spending rather than just saying to them it's bad. But one tip that the experts give is to estimate your spending. No one really wants to do a strict budget, and this is not talking about a budget. This is talking about just sitting down and looking at, say, food, clothes, transport, housing, entertainment. Could be your categories. There might be other categories that are relevant to you, and just making a rough estimate of what you spend in a month on those items, and then in the following month have a look at how accurate your estimate was. And in a study in Australia, I think I've told you about this before, but anyway, they got people to do that, and they found that people's estimates that they're spending on transport and rent were pretty accurate, and that's not surprising at all, because we know what the rent is, and we usually know roughly what we're going to spend on transport. People tended to spend more on clothes than they estimated, considerably more on alcohol than they estimated, and that goes along with the fact that your doctor says how many drinks do you have a week, and I think most of us who drink it all are all a bit guilty.
Round down.
Yes, round down a little bit there, and the same with our spending on it, and gambling was the one where people estimated way less than they spent on gambling. Of course, probably the majority of us don't spend anything on gambling other than perhaps buying a lotto ticket and maybe the odd raffle, but those who do tend to spend way more, and that's the same thing again. They don't want to acknowledge to themselves how much they're spending on stuff that's not terribly kosher, shall we say. Another tip that the experts talk about is the fact that a lot of spending is habits. A lot of it's about habits, and under certain circumstances, we might get up on Sunday mornings and typically go out for brunch or something like that, and that's a lovely thing to do. I'm not saying no one should do that, but if you find that you're spending a lot, you might want to start saying perhaps we'll do that every second week, or set a bit of a limit on how much you spend, or just be aware of how powerful habits are. They're like mini addictions in some ways, our habits, aren't they? We all tend to do certain things when we get up in the morning and all of that, and it's quite hard to break them.
The problem is they turn into fixed expenses, don't they?
Yes, and you're always used to buying this quality of wine or whatever it is. The point about habits is that a lot of research shows that if you change the habit for 30 days, if you set yourself a goal of not doing it or doing it less or whatever for 30 days, then you've usually broken the habit, which is far easier thing to think about than thinking I'm not going to do this ever again in my life or whatever. That just feels way too hard. But,
speaking of brunch on the weekends, I had a guest talking about food waste recently, and she reckons she hasn't bought butter in a couple of years because at the end of a cafe meal she grabs the leftover butter from her plate and from her friend's plate and takes it home with her. Yeah, she thinks it's a great way of saving money.
I can see doing that if it's wrapped in one of those little silver foil things.
Yeah,
but
not if you're just scraping it up with your teaspoon, Mary. It's not a good look. Isn't that Mary from the newspaper?
Yeah, yeah. Or Jessie from the radio and the TV. Yeah. As far as habits go, that some other research shows that, predictably, I suppose, that if you reward yourself every time you do it right, or if it's something you're doing every day, perhaps you have a little card and put a little tick on the card, and every time you get to 5 ticks, give yourself some kind of reward, so that you know, I mean, we all know this, but the fact is we don't always think of it at the time, that giving yourself some positive feedback for doing something good is an excellent way to help you change your habits. And also, I found recently there's a website called www.futureme.org, and you can send an email. You go on to FutureMe and send yourself an email that comes back on the day you want it to come back to you. I tried it to make sure it would. I sent myself a couple, one. It's got to be at least a month later. You can't do it for sort of next week, but a month or more later, you can send yourself a letter that says, "Hey, did you cut back on that spending, or did you change that other habit?" And it just does come into your inbox. It's free, and you can use it for all kinds of things. But just to remind yourself, did you lose that weight by now, or did you, just a little gimmicky thing that could be quite helpful for some people. Yeah,
that's a neat idea,
isn't it? I think on the website you've got it up there, haven't you? That you can make your email public, but I didn't, and most people probably wouldn't. Why would you want to?
The public ones are pretty just kind of funny ones. Dear future me, have you done anything worthwhile? Cured cancer? Created a unified field theory? If not, I'm so disappointed in you. Signed, the past.
Oh. Yes, there's probably all kinds of stuff in there that might be quite inspiring to look at. But I hasten to add that you don't have to make yours public.
Okay.
And most people probably won't want to. Another tip is to watch out for all the slogans that are out there that encourage you to spend. And one that I've found I'm a bit of a prey to is "You deserve it." Spend your money on this or do that because you deserve it. And if we really want to spend the money, we can always come up with a reason why we deserve it, because we took the rubbish out this morning, or there's always something. But in fact, that's just so manipulative. It's just that you're going along with exactly what they want you to go along with, which is to think about something you've done good lately, so that you can go and spend money on their products. And buy now, pay later, of course, is a classic slogan that, it's so easy. Even if pay later is 6 months down the line, 6 months kind of on one level feels like never, doesn't it? It's kind of like, I'll do this now, and 6 months later is so far away that we won't even worry about it. And of course, 6 months comes along, and typically you're paying interest on the money in the meantime. But there's all sorts of slogans that people put out there to try and encourage you to spend, like "just do it." Just do it isn't necessarily about spending, but it could be. You could in your mind, you could say, "Will I buy that or not?" And then you see the Nike slogan and you say, "Oh, bugger it, I'll do it."
Well, there's a cosmetic brand that's "You're worth it," isn't it?
Exactly,
there?
Yes. That's a really good example. Yes, yeah. You're worth boosting their shareholders' profits is what it amounts to, actually. Yeah. Now, Christmas. This time last year, we did a whole session on the sort of trap of Christmas, and so I thought, well, I won't repeat that again this year, but there were a few sort of key...
People can find it, by the way, like they can find all of Mary's sessions online.
Yeah, it was. So I think it was sometime in November last year. But there were a few particular ideas that I thought people might, and especially now that we're doing it in October, there's a little bit of time for people to think about this. One sort of general theme is to think about whether Christmas really is about presents and very expensive food and expensive wine, etc. Is that really what you want your Christmas to be about, or is it more about getting together with family and friends and having a really nice time? And as far as the kids go, if you say to the children, do you want presents or not? Well, of course they're going to say they want presents. But if you could actually give them a choice of, do you want more presents and mum and dad really stressed about spending too much, or would you prefer fewer presents and mum and dad not stressed? We know what they really want, even though on the day they'll say, I want presents and mum and dad not stressed. But if you are putting yourself into big debt in order to give the kids more stuff, the children know when you're stressed and they hate it. And so that's just something for people to bear in mind. A few ideas of that families can think about, and as I say, doing it in October, maybe there's time for people to email out to their brothers and sisters or whoever and say, how about we do it this way this year? One is to draw names out of a hat. So I just give one sister a present and she just gives one brother a present and so on. People always complain because they get the one that's hard to give presents to. But, get over it. Set a really quite a low dollar limit on presents, maybe $10 or something like that. And I've found, I don't know whether you have under those circumstances, you don't worry too much about what you give them. You just give them something cheeky or fun. If there's a $10 limit, they'll
although I would add, Mary, that at that $10 and under limit, you're more likely to get just junk that's going to be, no use to the world.
But it doesn't matter.
It's going to get thrown into a rubbish bin. Whereas at least if you buy something worth kind of $40 or $50, they might actually use the thing and keep it.
That's quite true. So
you can tell we've been discussing Secret Santa in our house and how we're going to do it this year.
Yeah, have you? Yeah, so what are you going to do?
Well, the Mulligan family tradition is for everyone to buy one random present that anyone could enjoy, and you pull them out at random and open them up. And then the Mulligan trick is that if you don't like what you've opened up, you can swap it for one of the presents that's already been opened.
Yes.
So you get a lot of bad blood, which is quite fun on a Christmas morning.
Yeah.
But my wife is much keener on the idea of picking one person, buying something for them so it's thoughtful and they're actually going to use it and not end up getting lumped with some random gift anyway. Negotiations
I think I might be more on her side there, because I think part of the pleasure of gift giving is the way you do think about that particular person and perhaps their house or what they like wearing or what they like reading or whereas if I've done the other one that you talk about where you have to buy something that everybody will like, and it's kind of ends up being some kind of generic thing but look, these are all things for families to choose their own. Another option is just to give to the children only, and perhaps give teenagers $20 each or something like that. We all know, I suspect, how hard it is to give to teenagers. They suddenly go, little kids are pretty unfussy. Well, they'll love the book you choose for them, but as they get older, by the time they're teenagers, you try and choose their music or their T-shirts or something like that, and good luck with it. Unless they've told you what they like, but. Giving to the kids only can work pretty well. Or in our family, we've actually, in my brothers and sisters' families, we've switched to giving one another presents for their birthdays only, not at Christmas, which is nice. We don't exchange presents with the adults at Christmas, but if you're just concentrating on the one brother in January, the one sister in August, like that, you're thinking about that one person and doing something more meaningful then, and that can work. And the final idea is, and perhaps do this as well, for family members to all put some money into a charity.
Yeah.
On the day, everyone puts $20 in or $50 in or something like that, and you have an interesting conversation about which charity you might give it to. But
it's a nice one.
It does make people feel good. Giving money to charity, it does actually make you feel happier. And on the day when there's all this other, opulence flowing around the room, it's quite nice to think we've also put some money into Women's Refuge or Red Cross or World Vision or, whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever. Now,
Caitlin has jumped in,
yes.
Executive producer. She prefers the Secret Santa where you choose for one person. And in her household, she says the recipient sits on the present throne and everyone watches them unwrap their presents, so they have their moment in the spotlight, which I think is quite nice.
Yes, as long as they all enjoy the spotlight, yeah. It's quite neat actually to exchange ideas on these things, isn't it? I wanted to finish off with a couple on a sort of more serious note for people who are really having concerns about their spending. So we're getting off Christmas now and into spending in general.
And just one quick message from Belinda
Yes.
on Christmas. A 6-year-old was given presents but instead asked for the whole family to go to a museum together and for both parents to not look at their phones all day.
Isn't that telling?
Smart 6-year-old. Yeah, thanks, Belinda.
Yes, and everybody might want to keep that in mind, that not just that family, that, you see parents all the time with their children at the beach or something, but they're on their phones a lot. So they're not really in spirit with the kids. Yeah, easy for me to be critical, I know. When my kid was little, there weren't cell phones, so it was different, yeah. But just to touch on these two because they're quite important, there's an outfit in New Zealand called FinCap, which used to be called the National Building Financial Capability Charitable Trust. So thank God they changed their name to FinCap. But so it's fincap.org. And through them, you can get free confidential budgeting advice, and you get a financial mentor who helps you work through your spending problems and your debt problems and so on. And I do recommend them. They're all around New Zealand. If you go on the website, there's people available all around the country and they can, those financial mentors can actually negotiate. If you owe a lot of money to the power company or people like that, they can negotiate with those people for you to actually sometimes pay less in total and certainly pay it gradually without losing your electricity or whatever in the meantime. But they can also help people to just curb their spending, and they know, they're trained to help you with that.
Are they a government organisation?
No, they're not government run, but I think there's sort of connections with the government.
Supported by the Ministry of Social Development as part of their Building Financial Capability initiative. It looks good. Looks really good. It's fincap.org.nz if people want to have a look at it.
Yeah, and I think, certainly they're worth looking at. And then the other one is something I've only just learned about called Debt Blocker, which is debtblocker.nz. And this has been started fairly recently by a chap named Rob Thompson down in Dunedin. He's got a doctorate in psychology, and I was talking to him on the phone the other day about it. He does some work with families that have problems with violence, and he said in those families he saw that really often there was also problems with addiction, alcohol, that sort of stuff, but also debt. And he said, I want to do something about the debt situation. And so what he set up, rather than just the government and everybody always blaming the lenders and saying you shouldn't be lending money to people, he set up a website so people can take a bit more control of their own situation and register as not wanting to be offered credit. And he says, for example, people who are concerned they may take out loans they can't afford, or they're concerned they might be forced to take out or act as a guarantor for loans for other people. And that's parents quite often whose adult children say, will you go guarantor on my borrowing money to set up a business or whatever. And sometimes it works fine, but some parents are sort of feel a bit obliged to, and they don't really want to, because then if the kid's business does crash or whatever, then the parents' retirement savings can be taken up, and these things are a problem. And Rob Thompson points out that parents who are in that sort of situation could register here, just quietly register on Debt Blocker as someone that doesn't want credit given to them. And so then when the child says, Mum and Dad, do you want to back me up? The parent could say, yeah, okay, we'll give it a go. And then the financial institution comes back and says, sorry, your parents can't do that. So that could be useful for some people. He also says there's some people with mental health issues or addictions that may lead them to take out loans. And so they might want to register on Debt Blocker. And
then he encourages lenders around New Zealand to check his register before.
Yes. So what he says, the lenders have to pay a small fee, and he said he's getting the banks interested and some of the payday lenders and all of that pay a small fee to check to see if a person's name is listed on Debt Blocker, and that money goes ultimately actually to other financial capability work, etc. But he says it means the lenders should like it because they don't actually really want to lend to people that they're going to have serious trouble getting the money back from, or they're going to be charged with being irresponsible lenders under the new laws that are getting stricter and stricter about that. So the lenders should quite like knowing upfront, no, Jesse Mulligan, you shouldn't lend to him. He's registered as someone who doesn't. As far as to get, have we got time for me to just quickly say, to get, excuse me, to get listed on that website, you have got to, you can't just yourself say, I want my name on there. You've got to either do it through a social service agency or a JP, and that's because he doesn't want me registering my brother on there or something. He wants to make sure it's you yourself who's put yourself on there. Doesn't want other people. That's not what it's about.
Don't want to use it as a weapon.
That's right. Yeah. And so you can either get a form off the website and fill it out in front and sign it in front of a Justice of the Peace, JP, or you can do it through one of the social service agencies that's listed on the website, and they will make it all work for you. So it shouldn't be hard to get on there, but it's just that it's not. You can't just, as I say, sign up your troublesome child or whatever.
Good one.
Yeah. And just if we've still got time, there was one thing that, in talking to Rob, excuse me, sorry, and talking to Rob Thompson, the guy who set this up, he said that he got the idea from when he was a student flatting, and they all got given student loans back in those days too easily, and they, for the first week or two, they were all dining out at his student flat, and they sort of sat down and said, look, we've got to do something about this. So what they did is put their credit cards in a jar of water and then freeze it, and put it in the freezer. So the cards are in the freezer in a jug of water or whatever it was, and that meant that they couldn't. He said you couldn't thaw it easily. If you put it in the microwave or an oven or something like that to try and thaw the water fast, it damaged the credit card. So it did actually take, 12 hours or 24 hours for the water to thaw enough to not spend. And so that's a pretty neat idea.
Okay, that one's called Debt Blocker if you'd like to find out more, debtblocker.nz. Next week, Mary will be, or next time, in a couple of weeks' time on a Thursday, Mary will be answering your questions about mortgages. If you have anything you'd like to ask her about your mortgage, about the best way forward, what sort of mortgage you should be on, how to split it up, whether you should pay it now or later, fixed or floating, any of those sorts of questions, send them through to us, Jessie@radionz.co.nz, and Mary will answer them next week.